Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome to episode 226. And real quick, let me just wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. That's coming up here in just a couple of days, so I hope you got your turkey thawing in the fridge, by now at least, or else you're going to have to go find one right away. We are getting ready here, but not before sharing this fantastic episode with you. A great episode with a great friend of the show. We are talking today with author and podcaster Chuck Buda. In this episode, we're going to be discussing topics such as finding your voice, series versus standalone, dealing with imposter syndrome, and writing to your genre and knowing the lingo and the tropes, that kind of stuff. We're also going to be discussing his brand new series, The Sentinel, and book one that is out right now called Sleeping Dogs Lie. It's a great conversation and wonderful to get to catch up with Chuck a little bit and hear everything that he's been up to, which is different from the show that he does, the Mondo Method, with another friend of the show, Armand Rosamilia. They've been doing that together for like 6 years now or a little more, and they talk weekly about writing and what they've been up to and that kind of stuff. And so but it's nice to have this personal little chat and kind of dive deeper into some of the things that he's been up to and talk about what he thinks of writing. And you're going to enjoy this chat. So if you want to get into it right away, make sure to you can go ahead and click ahead about another 4 minutes, and then you can hear the interview with Chuck. Otherwise, I can share a few things with you. Like number one, I don't know what was up with my audio. Everything sounded great whenever we were recording, and even when I first checked it, it was fine. But something in the transfer came up, and I don't know. I'm hoping that the audio sounds good on this, but we'll see how that turns out in post. As for episodes, I'm not going to have any more episodes this month in November, but I am planning at least one or two more in December before taking a break through the rest of the holidays, and then we'll get the show kicked off and going again here in January. And hopefully by then I will have this cold kicked. It seems like it's trying to come back on me again, but hopefully I'll be feeling much better. My voice will be normal, and all will be well with the world. Meanwhile, I am having a really good time writing in NaNoWriMo this year. Hey, if you are doing NaNoWriMo, it's not too late to send me a friend request. You can just look me up. Actually, I think you can find me by the show, Sample Chapter Podcast, but otherwise you can just look me up as Jason A. Meiske and find me on there. Send me a friend request, and we'll be happy to cheer each other on as we push through. I've been working on Bandit 2, feverishly finishing up the last couple chapters, writing the big finale, the chase, the final chase and battle, and just having a really good time with that. Things that are happening that I didn't expect, and it's really, really cool. At the same time, I've been outlining and making writing down information for Bandit 3, getting that all ready, and I think that's what I'm going to do this time. Is I may actually, as soon as I'm all done with Bandit 2, I think I'm going to dive right into Bandit 3, since it's all fresh in my head, and we'll see where that goes, because I'd like to get Bandit 3 up earlier. Gosh, it's been a year. It's been over a year now since Bandit 1 came out, and the plan was for Bandit 2 in the spring, and that didn't work out. But hopefully I can do that with Bandit 3, get that out. At the very least, get it out before summer. That'd be nice. I am still targeting Christmas for release of Bandit 2, so stay tuned to social media links for updates on all that, like last week when I shared the book cover reveal for Bandit 2, and that got a great response. A lot of people are very excited, and I mean, hey, I am too. It's a fantastic cover. It's not one I did. It's a great artist who did that. Again, if you want to follow the show on social media, it is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Very easy to find, just the Sample Chapter Podcast. You can also email the show if you have a comment or a request, then just reach out to me at samplechatterpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to also check out our podcast friends at Pop Goes the Culture Network. The link is in the show notes. They're home to about a dozen other fantastic shows, all of them great, all of them fun, and all of them pop culture related. And lastly, yeah, if you are a coffee lover like me, don't forget to click the link in the show notes for Writer's Block Coffee. They have 3 delicious flavors, all of them fantastic, and you can try a sample of one, try them all, order one time or set it up on automatic shipping. And don't forget that whenever you go to make your order, use coupon code SAMPLECHAPTER to save 10% on your order and get it in time for Christmas. All right, everybody. Well, it is time for me to go ahead and step aside, and let's get on over to our interview with the truly wonderful Chuck Buda. Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Hey, welcome back. We are welcoming to the show another one of our longtime friends of the show, and just a great guy all around. This week we are welcoming back Chuck Buda. Chuck writes across multiple genres, including westerns, horror, and crime thrillers. He loves to eat pizza, drink whiskey and craft beers, listen to Norwegian black metal, and searches for answers about Bigfoot and UFOs. Plus, he works very hard to fit in quotes from Seinfeld or Big Bang Theory into every conversation he has. That is a lot of fun in one man. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome back to the show my friend, Chuck Buda.
Thank you. You know, it's fun. It's always funny when somebody like introduces you and goes through this stuff, and I realize I'm kind of a goofball, aren't I? Like I have all that stuff, and it's like, should I be more serious or should I be Chuck? I guess I can't help being Chuck because that's kind of who I am. But yeah, I'm excited to be back, man. Good to be with you always. So. Oh
man, I love having you back. It's been kind of fun for me here lately, having a few people back. I got to talk to Frank Edler recently, and now you guys are tied at 3. So Armand is still way out in front of everyone at 5 visits, and I heard him recently. He wants to come back again. So it's like, oh, all right. I'm about to have a jacket made or something, or a T-shirt or something like that.
Yeah.
Start sending them out to people who've been in the 5-time club or something like that. But we'll see. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like anytime I get to be on another show, and you hear that intro, I find myself kind of looking around, going like, God, they're talking about me. Are you sure you're talking about me?
Yeah, I'm obviously not good at self-promotion, so which we talked about. I just I don't know. It's funny. Like I could talk about myself all day long with friends and family, but when it comes to like promoting the books, I kind of fold inside myself. I don't know why. It's not really the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
But yeah, I'm kind of backwards. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So you were first here in June of 18. We talked about the first cut, your vampire books, and then you came back in March of 19 with Armand, talking about Keyport Cthulhu 2, which I've read the first one. I haven't gotten into the rest of them yet. Since then, you've come out with other books that I've been able to read, which, of course, Beers and Fears, and that series, Debt Collector, I got to read. I already mentioned Cthulhu 1, and then Son of Earp series. I checked that out and loved it. And I mean, you've been really busy in the last few years. I can't believe it's been 3 years since you were on the show last. So, I mean, it's you've been kind of all over the place with the supernatural, the touching on some westerns here and there, and your horror, that Debt Collector. Oh my gosh, that is one crazy dude. And then now branching into straight westerns. I mean, man, how do you do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's true. I have been busy, but I never satisfy myself in terms of how much I produce. I still feel like I should be at that stage when I started releasing stuff and I was unemployed and I was basically doing a book a month. My brain has adjusted. So Armand has yelled at me on the Mondo method enough times to say, you can't expect to do that and, survive. And I finally agreed with him, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I still feel like you could definitely do more. Part of that is like the FOMO, because I see all these other authors coming out with books, and all the time, and I just feel as if they're releasing more stuff and more frequently than I am. And it's really not the case, because kind of when you really get down to it, everybody is doing anywhere from like 1 or 2 to 4 books a year. But I think the calculus in my brain adds it all together. So I take, author A, B, and C, and they're each releasing 4 books, and I'm like, oh, that's 12 books. I should be releasing 12 books. I that's the way my brain works, and it's faulty, and that's part of my Hungarian heritage, I guess. So, but yeah, it's I do a lot, but not enough. I wish I could do more, and kind of like what we were talking about as we were starting the call. I'm still very inconsistent. I think that's the biggest struggle is persistence and consistency. It's getting into the chair every day. You let the day job get in the way. We got a dog recently, and I make excuses because he needs to be walked or played with, and I'm like, oh, I can't write because I got to take care of the dog. So it's just too easy, to not dial it up every day. And really, it's a shame, because if I did, first of all, I'd make my life a lot easier, because when it comes to deadline time, I could chip away at the deadline little by little instead of trying to scramble, close to the end. But I think it would help the writing process too, by building that consistency. It's like building a muscle. It's like working out with weights or whatever, which I also haven't done in a long time. Just to keep things firing and really build that muscle and the word count. And I think I finally hit 1 million words or whatever very recently. So over my lifetime. So they say like the first 1 million words are throwaway. So hopefully I'm going to start writing good stuff now.
And I mean, you're touching on that imposter syndrome, and it's funny because like I've heard other authors who are, quote unquote successful, and they've got the book deals, they've got movie deals and whatever. But I hear them in interviews as well talking about, they're looking up to these other authors and thinking like, oh man, I want to be there. And it's one of those things I've kind of realized, like, what is we've got to find out what is our definition of success. At what point are we going to feel like we are an author, and is it even achievable? Is there something that are we going to at some point realize we're like, yeah, I am an author, and I'm doing good, and can we reach that point?
I don't know. I wish I had an answer to that, because it's funny. I'll meet people for the first time, and they'll say, "Oh, what do you do?" and whatever. If they find out that I write, and then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm an author. I have some books out there," and they're like, "Really, you wrote a book?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I got like 20 of them out there actually," and they're always super impressed. And yet I don't walk away feeling like I'm some, big chief wahoo or anything. I still feel kind of like, this average Joe who, I mean, I definitely feel accomplished, because how many people walk around saying, someday I'm going to write a book, someday I'm going to write a book. And even though there's millions of us out there, it's still just a tiny, tiny fraction of the population who have actually done it. Done one, let alone, a dozen or two. So it's there should be more self-satisfaction in that. And I don't know if if it's money, if it's number of titles, if it's the reviews. Sometimes I look at the reviews and I'm like, man, I've been doing this for so long and I still only have like 5 reviews on this book or whatever. And it's it doesn't matter how much you beg people and plead and say, please leave a review or just star it. Even if you don't leave a review and you just do like the the global star review or something, just do something. And yet so many people don't. It's I don't know. I don't know what the measure of success is.
And and you kind of touched on this a little bit already there, but one of the things I think we as authors need to realize, and this is just kind of across life in general that I've discovered, is you never know who you are touching in some way. And I don't mean that, exactly physically or anything like that, but just
Right.
touching their life in some way. You never know how you're impressing upon someone sometimes until down the road maybe you find out like, oh yeah, this person did this because of it. And I can tell you a little story. Like I heard of you before I heard of Armand.
Really?
uh yeah, yeah, I heard you on our buddy Ryan Pelton on
Oh
his author
yeah.
show. I heard you on there, and you were talking about your book a month that you were doing, and all that. And I'm like, man, this guy Chuck Buda is incredible. And I mean, it like really inspired me to think like, all right, I want to be like this guy Chuck. I want to check this out. I'm gonna have to find out where else he's on. And then I heard that's how I found out about Mondo Method. And it took me a couple of episodes before I realized, oh, okay, this is Armand's kind of leading it, and Chuck is learning along the way. It's like, but still, I mean, you inspired me at that time, and there's no way you would know that. And I don't think I've ever told you that in the past. And I mean, that's a failure on my part for not letting you know. And you never know. Like if you go to these events or something like that, and like you said, somebody's walking along and they're talking to you about it. For me, it's these little kids coming along, and the parents are like, yeah, this is an author. And I hold up a book, and it's like, yeah, there's my picture. See, that's me. And the kids' eyes just sparkle, and they grow, and they're like, you wrote that? You're an author? And I just kind of laugh, and so then I'll talk to them like, yeah, do you like to write? Oh, wow, that's really cool. I love that. And I realize the power we have to inspire somebody else, and whether they do something or not with it, who knows? But how cool would it be to find out down the road that that kid went home and started writing? And we have no idea. Like I go home and then I'm opening up my Scrivener and I'm like, man, I am writing some shit today. This sucks. you know. But then you never know. Maybe down the road this kid will be like, yeah, I met Jason at a thing and I've got this book, and you never know. And it's the same thing for you, man. I mean, you do inspire people whether you know it or not.
Wow. I mean, first of all, I'm floored by such a compliment, and coming from you, because I look at you and everything that you've done and all the authors you've spoken to, and I feel like I can't hold a candle to that. I know I have my fans, because there are very loyal readers who reach out to me and talk offline and stuff, and I'm still humbled by that. And I'll never forget, I was at Scares That Care one year, and I was leading a, a discussion group. I think it was the one with Ed Lee and Wrath James White, and who I look at as huge stars. And then my family was actually there to watch me interview these guys, and some guy came up from the back at the end, and he was like, he had one of my books, and he's like, can you sign this? And I was like, yeah, you mean me, or one of these guys? He's like, no, you. He's like, I was looking for you. And my daughter was giving me the sidelong glances like, what? And she even said in the parking lot, like later that night when we were leaving, she kept looking at me weird, and I was like, what? And she's like, I can't believe somebody like wanted your signature and thought that you were like famous or something. I'm like, I know, it's weird, right? And you usually don't hear it as much from readers as you do from the Mondo Method listeners. I can't tell you how many times, especially at Scares That Care, because that's when a lot of the people gather, and they come up to the table and they tell Armand and I, thanks for what you do, and we've learned so much, from
Mm-hmm.
all your mistakes, and your pig-headedness about making change and stuff. And I laugh, but I literally shake, and I tremble kind of with the weight of that responsibility. But not that it's a bad thing, but I'm just like, wow, I can't believe like people hang on our words that way. And so we've always been so focused on kind of what we do on the show, just because we feel that responsibility. It's like, no, we really want to help people. We don't want to blow smoke up everybody's butt, like I shouldn't say all the other shows, but there are shows out there who, they're like, oh, we sell millions of books and we do this and that. And then you look at the numbers on KDP and you're like, it's a sham. And we've always kind of kept it real, warts and all, which leads to lots of fodder for making fun of us, especially me. And I know a lot of people dig when Armand yells at me, and he hasn't yelled at me in a while, so I should do something to piss him off soon, just so he can, so we could give the people what they want. But
maybe he'll hear this and be like, "What the hell?"
But yeah, I mean, wow, it's true. You never think of kind of inspiring people. I do want to. Part of what I'm trying to get away, or not get away, but change paths a little bit from horror to the classic westerns is, I feel that I can't go deep enough into, Christianity, and really life lessons and stuff, and kind of what I'm doing with this new classic western series. It's it's The Sentinel, is the series title, and the main character is really an amalgamation of myself, my father, some other people that I've looked up to, and the struggle to do what's right, and to have a positive impact on family and friends and stuff. And as I get older, I think a lot about the stuff, that I've said and done, and not too proud of it at sometimes, with family and friends and even strangers, being from New Jersey with the road rage, I've said and done some things on the road I'm not proud of, and really, try to be a better person. And so I don't beat people over the head in this series with that, but I do finally come to my writing now with a little more purpose and thematic approach, as opposed to what I did in the past, which was more, over the top scares and sex and all that kind of stuff. It was more just pulp reading, and I think my Western is still pulp reading, but I'm not going to lie that there's deeper roots, which hopefully come out. So I don't know. I'm trying something new, so we'll see how the readers respond. And so far it's been good, but it's still in the early stages.
But I mean, do you think maybe that was part of that? You were saying you got the first million words in. Maybe that was just a part of that. It was a part of finding your voice.
I think I had a voice. It might be more maturity. It might be part more my mortality. I've lost some people in the last few years, and as everybody has, and it's I'm getting up there in age. I'm almost 53, and some people think I'm young, and some people think I'm really old, like talking to my kids. I in my brain I still think I'm 22, but my body doesn't respond the same way, so like. So part of it is, what's my legacy? I think I've just gotten to a point where it's like the writing is fun, and it's always cathartic for me, because I am a very angry person and have depression and all those things. I mean, I don't really talk about it a lot because, nobody cares. I'm not going to sit at, I don't give my political views and my religious views and all that stuff because unless somebody asks, nobody gives a crap. So sure. I'm not going to stand on a thing and shout to the heavens, this is the way it should be and stuff, because everybody has their own opinion and everybody has their own path, and that's the way it should be. But I think mine has just led to, I think it's just my mortality and my maturity. I can't believe I'm finally maturing now at this old age, but I'm finally starting to go, think in my head, what more could I say? Do I have something that's more meaningful that I could leave behind instead of just, slashing people up and stuff, which I still love. It's like, it's not like I'm turning my back on it, and I still have plans to release standalone horror stories, in the future. But yeah, I guess there's just more serious side coming out for once, and I don't know. I guess I'm getting sappy as I get older.
Well, it's remarkable. It's remarkable you said standalone, because I was going to ask you about that. That you have most of your library, it appears, is series, either 3 books or an ongoing series. And then I don't know. Have you had standalones before?
I had one. I had Boondock
Yeah.
Butcher, which came out last year, and that was, it was kind of my foray into splatterpunk. I really wanted to do something that was more over the top. I mean, some people argue that, like the Gushers series, like the first cut and stuff was kind of splatterpunk because it had over the top sex and violence. But, I kind of didn't set out to do that. That's what the story prescribed from me. Whereas Boondock Butcher, I came out and I said, no, I want to do like, some redneck in the mountains, like over the top, sick stuff. And
You succeeded there, I can tell you.
yeah. Well, and the other issue was, I've struggled because my brain thinks in series, so it's very natural for me to do like longer works. But it's a struggle at conventions or book signings to sell my books, because people look at it and they come to the table, and everybody's got a limited supply of disposable income, especially these days with inflation and layoffs and all that kind of stuff. But they come to the table and they're like, well, I really have to invest a lot, and I don't even know if I'm going to like this series. So do I start with book 1, and what if I don't like it? Then I'll feel that the stuff is unfinished. And then also, like, if I like it, now I'm on the hook to buying a couple more books. Ebook wise, it works. Ebooks, people will roll from book to book to book, and it's no problem. But yeah, I would go to signings and do book signings at the Beers and Fears and festivals and stuff with Armand and Frank and Tim and JC Walsh, and they're all killing it, because they have series, but they also have standalones. But people can come up and grab a book here, grab a book there, and for me it was really like they gloss over mine, because it's like I don't know, and so part of that was, hey, I got to come out with a standalone so I could actually sell something for once at a table. And oddly enough, I just did CreepyCon in Knoxville this past summer, and I was selling series books like crazy. And it was weird. Also, I sell a lot of Son of Earth books on ebook, but not in person. And I was selling 3-4 books at a time of Son of Earth series at CreepyCon. And, maybe I finally, now that I moved from New Jersey to Tennessee, I guess the cowboy stuff resonates more, because people were like, oh, this is like a weird Western. I love Westerns. And they were buying like clumps of books, and I was just like, holy crap, like, I should have moved here earlier, because I couldn't sell these things back in New Jersey, and now here I am, and it's working. And I was telling people that I was working on a classic Western series, and they were kind of fired up. They're like, oh, are you going to have it here next year? I'm like, yeah. So I'm very series heavy, and I plan to do some more standalones, but unfortunately I have more serious stuff in the works. So that's just the way I work.
Though. But that's cool though. And I mean, and each of the things that you write, they're just different enough to kind of stretch yourself as a writer, which I appreciate. It's like I like writing in that thriller vein, but I like to go, like, my first one was paranormal, the second one was a little more crime, and then now I've got this kind of a retro sci-fi is what I keep calling it. And I really enjoy doing that differently. And it's, I just had my own short story come out in an anthology, and that was a whole nother animal for me to come up with something short and keep it under 5,000 words. And I'm enjoying that, flexing that muscle, to to quote you a while ago, that flexing the muscle and doing something a little different and to grow from that. And I feel like what you're doing, it's helping me as well to write each story better, whether it's going to be continued in a series or if it's, something else that I write down the road. And it's got to help and, make something else better down the road. And you never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, I think part of it too is just, two sides of it. I grew up reading, Stephen King, and his books are so different from book to book.
Sure.
And the other thing is, I'm a Sagittarius, so part of my thing is I chase the flashy, new butterfly or light that goes dancing along. So my brain doesn't stop. I can't focus on stuff, and sometimes I worry because I read other folks. I've been doing a lot more crime thriller series thanks to Armand and Dan Padavana now. So, I read like CJ Box and Jeff Carson and stuff. And these guys got like 16, 19, 20 books, BJ Borg. And it's just like he's got like 25 books. And it's just like, wow, like, I don't know if I could focus on, like, even though I love series, I don't know if I could keep writing a series that long, like that many volumes to it. 3, no problem. Trilogies, I could bang out without an issue. 6 books, it's more of a challenge, but I could still do it. But yeah, extending anything beyond 6 or 7 books, I think would be a huge challenge. And so part of my thing is I can't sit still. Like I got to jump into the next thing and try, my hand at something else. But going back to what you said about, I still struggle with short story. I feel like my short stories, there's really only 2 or 3 that I'm proud of. The rest of them I think are train wrecks. And I don't know why. I think it's just the economy of words. And I don't deal with a lot of description in my books. I keep it light and keep the pace moving. I don't like big paragraphs of description. So it shouldn't be difficult for me to handle economy of words, yet it is. I just cannot get my brain to narrow into, 5,000 or 7,000 words or shorter. It's really, really difficult for me to do that, succinctly. And I don't know. That's part of my development and struggle, and it's usually the opposite. People are like, oh, I have no problems with short stories. It's writing something long. I can't go short.
I think had I not had so many people giving me feedback, because it was part of a writing group, and we beta read each other's stuff. We had like 3 of us would break off and like, all right, I'm going to read yours. And then you give me yours, and I'll read yours in return. And so I had like 3 different people reading mine and giving me their feedback. And then my wife was looking at my story as well, and that helped. All of that together is like, that's the most feedback I've ever gotten on anything with that short story. So that I think helped out too, and it gave me things to consider too. It's like, oh well, yeah, this word. Like I had one guy who was a former journalist, so he's all about, hey, you got 3 lines here that are essentially saying the same thing. You can cut it down to this. And I'm just like slapping myself on the forehead going like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. And another guy is going, he's a little more sci-fi, and he's just like, yeah, hey, if you do this, then that'll open up this part of the story. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. And I'm just like hoping that I'm giving, even close to that kind of advice back to them with my own feedback. But and then like you said with this series, like I never imagined myself writing a long series until I started this Bandit series, and I sat down to start writing it, and I realized as I'm like a couple chapters in, I'm like, wow, this is going to be more than 1 book. And so I started kind of like mapping it out a little bit, and I realized like I got enough stories for 8 to 10 books, maybe, as long as I can keep going with it. But I need to keep. I'm also Sagittarius. I mean, I think our birthdays are like a day or 2 away from each other. But yeah, I need to write something else in between. Like I want to continue with Bandit and keep putting 1 or 2 out a year, but I gotta put something else out in between there just to kind of break it up in my head and then go from there.
Yeah, and that's the smart way to go. Is to break it up. I mean, for a couple reasons. One is, which again, I'm seriously terrible at this, is teaching. And Armand always yells at me. You gotta like train the readers when to expect books, and I've kind of been all over the map with either releasing a ton of them right away and then nothing for a year or two, or um, spreading them out too far. And it's really true. And by breaking it up that way and doing, 2 books a year, maybe on the Bandit, and then 1 book on another project, gives you that chance to like clear your head and do something else. Which I think is great. What happens with me, because my brain is so small, is then I forget stuff that I did in the series, and I got to go back and like reread everything. I'm like, who's still alive? Like, what was the last thing that happened to this guy? I'm like, holy crap! Like, I really got to go back and figure this stuff out. So the key is to find that mix of giving yourself the break, but not going too long, so that you don't have to go and refresh the whole series to catch up on what you were doing last. So.
Oh my gosh, I love your self-depreciating humor, but you are not alone there, man. I've I've been working on Bandit 2 all year, and I still am going back on crap. What was this guy's name again in the last book? And what did I say they look like? Is it this alien or is it that alien? I'm like, damn it, and go back and pick my notes.
Yeah, I'm bad about keeping a Bible of stuff. In Scrivener, I have notes sometimes with the character. I have like a little character sheet, but again, it's like a bullet or two. Like, I don't go into a ton of description, because a lot of times, and this is the way I read. When I read, I kind of envision the characters looking the way I think they look, based on their actions or the way they speak or something. And sometimes if somebody describes the character too much, it causes a problem for me. Not a big problem, but there's like a disconnect with how I view the character, which is kind of why I don't like watching movies or TV shows after I read a series, because I'm like, that's not what that guy looks like, or whatever. So sometimes it changes things, and I'm just too regimented to accept those facts. But yeah, I should be better about doing a Bible. I know a lot of authors keep, some measure of Bible, whether it's in a notebook or in the Scrivener character, sheets or whatever, just to stay on track. And I'm bad about that. I'm starting to be a little bit better now with the classic Western series. So I have more notes and stuff, because there's particular things that I don't want to miss. But yeah, I don't know. It's a never ending learning and growing process, and which is part of the fun of it, is that, like you were talking about before, is just evolving, changing, doing something different, challenging yourself, because it's very easy to get into a rut. And I think the readers expect different. Some love to always come back and get the same thing over and over again, but a lot of people, they want something different. They want to be challenged too. They want to see your development and say, oh, when I read his first stuff, it was good, but now it's like really good. Now I can see like he knows what he's doing, and I hope people think that. So.
yeah, I think so. I agree. Well, I mean, you brought it up, and I've been wanting to get back to it, so let's saddle up and mosey on over to your new Western, Sleeping Dogs Lie. And I know, like, following you as I do, I know you've been looking forward to doing a Western for a long time, and that's one of my dream projects, is to one day do a Western. But other than what I've seen on TV and in movies, I don't know the lingo. I don't know. It's like, all right, I got to remember what exactly is a bridle. How are you doing with the details?
Yeah, it's funny. It's all over the place, actually, because if you read the classics, like Max Brand and Louis L'Amour and people like that, it's they don't go into a whole lot of over the top like Western description and stuff. They might with the setting, but not so much with with the weapons and the saddle parts and all that kind of stuff. So it's all over the map. And I read some Westerns now, some more modern writers who are terrific writers, that I really like Peter Brandvold and C.J. Pettit, Lane Warensky. I mean, his Mountain Man series is great, and it's all over the place. Like some of them are intense with kind of the lingo and the details, and then others are not, and it's more just like kind of modern writing in a Western setting. So I think I'm a hybrid because I can't decide which way to go. And I was like that with my Son of Earp series too. There were certain characters where I made them talk, with the drawl and the kind of the pappy lingo and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
But other characters I just stuck to almost like a modern English vibe. So I don't know, because sometimes if you go too far with it, you cause the reader to stumble, because if they're always kind of reading that, for lack of better description, like pidgin English or Western garble, the hillbilly kind of speak, sometimes it gets too much and it pulls you from the story. At least I find that it does. So I think you use it sparingly. I think, in terms of like the equipment and the setting, like if it plays into the scene or into the action, I think it's good to bring up. Otherwise, I just kind of leave it in the mind of the reader. Again, I think a lot of times we don't give the reader enough credit of what they bring to the table in terms of understanding and stuff. And I know I've been guilty of trying to browbeat the reader into like force feeding stuff because I feel like they're not going to get it. And it's like, no, they'll get it. Like they're not dumb.
Yeah.
So the short answer is, I don't know. It's all over the place. I mean, depending on who you read, I think you just find whatever style is your own. I think it's probably a good thing to do a mix of stuff. And, when you find a need for it, you can Google stuff. I mean, I have all kinds of books on my desk right next to me now, like How the West Was Worn and Saloons of the Old West, Cowboy Lingo. I have those books. So I mean, once in a while I'll reference them, and they're fun reads, on their own. But yeah, it's really to each their own. And I don't know. I hope what I want to do is I kind of want to cling to the more modern reader and not force people to kind of go back in time. I hope that they bring that to the table with themselves from watching, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, The Rifleman, and Bonanza, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's part of my development. We'll see how the feedback comes in. I mean, so far it's been good, so I guess I'm getting it right, but I don't know if I have really hardcore Western fans reading it yet. So I guess I'll find out when those folks discover what I'm doing and see if they think it's good or not.
Well, I mean, you bring up a good point, because if you're focusing on story, then the rest of it will fall into place. You pepper it in with just the kind of details that you need. And as you alluded to earlier, you don't really like to do a lot of descriptors. So it's like, yeah, he hopped on the horse and, pulled on the reins. And I mean, that's already painting a picture. The reader will fill it in from there. You don't have to be Tom Clancy and explain the history of this style of horse, before they go up the mountain, versus another horse that's meant for racing. It's not necessary. Just focus on story and go on from there.
Yeah. First of all, yeah, I'm not smart enough to know all those details. I mean, I could go back and study all that, but then I find that I'm on that fine line of, you got to balance the research and the writing. Like, you got to just get the stuff done. And I know for myself that if I go down a rabbit hole with the research, I won't publish anything. I'll just keep researching everything until I know every little detail. And and then I'll get off track. So yeah, it's a process. So I'll keep learning, and like I said, let people tell me, if they think it's on target. I mean, I have gotten feedback from people on the Son of Earth series, I know, where people were like, well, it's not really a Western because he doesn't really talk about, all the Western implements and stuff. And that's fair, because I agree. Like I don't come across as hardcore Western. It's more like the setting and the feel and the era. But yeah, I focus more on the story, the plot, and the characters as opposed to some of those minor details. But the minor details are important, so I'm not brushing it aside by any means. It's just not in my wheelhouse, I guess.
Yeah, but that's good though, and it sounds like you're doing well with it. So book one is Sleeping Dogs Lie, which is available now, and what was the series name?
It's the Sentinel series.
Sentinel. Okay, so give us some background. What's going on with this series?
So the Sentinel is basically it's this guy Cordell Manning. So he was a sheriff in this small town in Kansas. I wanted it to be more of a mix of Western and Eastern, so I didn't want to go too far west. Plus, part of the setting really called for some plains, some woods and stuff. So, going towards like a Texas or an Arizona, I thought would pull me out of kind of some of the things I wanted to do. But basically, he was the sheriff of Sorrow Creek. And he's known far and wide for his sense of justice and fairness. So, again, drawing from, characters in the past that I've seen, from like Gunsmoke and stuff, he's sort of a Matt Dillon-ish kind of guy from Gunsmoke, but he's got a little more of an edge to him. So, he's got a little bit of a shady past, and he struggles, I think, with being a good guy and doing the right thing, even though in his position, he does, he takes his job as sheriff very seriously. But he's got a dark side, and part of that comes back to haunt him. And so basically he loses his job as sheriff, and he becomes like a pariah in the community of Sorrow Creek, and kind of goes off to lick his wounds and hide himself, and because he's lost, but along the way he has found a couple of youngsters that he's kind of taken under his wing, that he really I think it fulfills kind of his loss. So he lost his family because of his history and stuff. So having these folks around keeps him grounded, but at the same time, they're kind of difficult for him. So one is an Indian woman character, and I love her because she looks like a man, and she does that purposely, and she really doesn't speak because he had saved her, or he had encountered her when she was being gang raped by a bunch of settlers. And she's a Comanche Indian. And so he kind of took her under his wing. And because of that, she totally changed herself and became, she hides who she is. So, she can't really hide her skin color, but nobody really knows that she's a female. And then of course there's, the tough guy, shooter character who's he doesn't say a lot, but he's good with his gun. And then of course there's the foil, the wiseacre. There's a guy with a big mouth, and he's good at fist fighting, not necessarily with his gun, but he gets into trouble because he can't keep his mouth shut. He's like one of these, like, he starts lots of trouble. So the four of them, it's basically a series about, and the reason I call him the Sentinel is because, not only in his status as sheriff at one point of Sorrow Creek, but he's also kind of the shepherd and the sentinel of these three lost people that he's encountered along the way and taken under his wing, and also for himself, because he's still trying to figure out who he is. I think he knew who he was before his family was taken from him, and now, now he fights the darkness that rages in his heart and his soul. So, he's still trying to be good, but there's kind of a monster in him. So it's a lot of fun. That the first book was almost, I don't want to say light, because it's not light, but it's going to get darker as the series grows. So like that, the second book is will be coming out in December. It's called Hangman's Noose, and it'll have more mystery to it. So the sheriff, won't be so much as a shootout type thing. It'll be a little more sleuthing and, uncovering clues and have a mystery aspect to it, which is a little different for me. So, yeah, it's fun. So I don't know. I'm having a great time with it. I think the characters are really cool, and part of, again, going back to my message of Christianity and doing the right thing and all that kind of stuff. I kind of see myself in Cordell Manning, trying to right the wrongs, the bad things that I've said and done to people that I care about, through the years, and try and make amends without coming out and apologizing to people and admitting that I'm a piece of garbage. So, but I mean, it's just, I think everybody is that way. Even my horror stories are like that. The people are really the monsters. I mean, I think we all have a light and a dark side, which is, part of, regardless of what faith you have, or even if you have no faith, I think we all struggle with that in this universe, is trying to manage that, ambivalence. So I feel like I'm doing a lot of yakking, so you could tell me to be quiet anytime.
No. You're giving us the background, and I can just tell right now the audience is probably buying into it and anxious to check out book one, just like I am. I've been like pulling it up in the background, going like, yeah, I missed it last month when it came out, so I'm like getting it pulled up right now so I can grab a copy for myself. But it's been a bit since I've read a Western. I think it was The Virginian is the last time I read a Western, like 2 years ago. But so yeah, I'm looking forward to checking this out and seeing where it goes. And I appreciate how you got that that classic 3-act structure where book one's like an introduction and seeing where things are going, and then book two, it sounds like, is going to be the darkness, and you put them in the worst possible thing, and then book three, the conclusion is what it sounds like. So looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, it's each book will stand alone, so it's not like you have to read them in any order, which is a little different than what I've done in the past. But there is character growth, because you can't brush the overarching, character arcs under the table. But by the same token, I want it to be able to be read in any order that you want. And I actually have a prequel, which really goes into what happens with his family, and that will be available only through my mailing list. So that story is done. I'm still polishing it, and I haven't really worked on building my mailing list yet. But when I make that announcement, that will be a free novella through my newsletter, and that'll really be book one, essentially, the prequel. But again, I explain some of the prequel in the first book, Sleeping Dogs Lie, so it's not like you have to read the prequel. But I think if somebody really likes the series, it'll be really cool to kind of see the genesis of what happened. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm having a great time with it, and obviously there's room to grow. So if the series does well, I might do spin-off series with some of the other characters. I might have a spin-off series for the Comanche Indian female character, because I think she's really deep. And of course the mouthy character in the shooter. So I think they all have classic tropes and things, but they also have enough difference in their personalities that they can stand alone as well. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And if it calls for it, I will branch out into those other series that are related. And if not, I still have more fodder for this series to go longer than 6 books. Again, if it needs to. But right now the plan is just 6 books. So we'll see.
Awesome. And you touched on the the newsletter and such. Where can people find and follow you?
I'm pretty much everywhere. Most of my books are wide. This series, the plan is to keep it only in Kindle right now, in Kindle Unlimited, so that I could build a little more traction. But people can find me Amazon or authorchuckbuda.com is my website, and it's kind of just a plain website, but you can sign up for the newsletter, and it's got links to my books and stuff. So the website's still a work in progress too. 6 years later, it's changed a few times, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm located. I am on social media, but I'm terrible at it. If you listen to the Mondo Method, you'll hear Armand yell at me. I'm mostly on Twitter these days, but I do have a Facebook page and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. I just don't really check in too often, so. And I know I should.
Well, and along with that, yeah, anybody, make sure you're following along with the Mondo Method so you can hear more of this incredible advice we've gotten today. You get some more of that every week with Chuck and Armand. So I'll have links for all that in the show notes. And Chuck, man, as always, absolutely outstanding getting to talk to you and catching up. And I wish you all the best, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I love listening to your show. And, your Bandit series is on my TBR too. So really looking forward to see where you go with that. The cover is phenomenal on that series. And I saw that you had like a picture of like the T-shirt and stuff at your signing. So, you got a lot of cool stuff related to it. So I'm kind of excited to see where you go with that series as well. So I'm fired up.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that. And the check's in the mail for saying that. So
yeah, come on, you're one of the original gangsters from the Mondo Mafia. So you're a great guy, and your show is tremendous. I mean, you have so many great authors on and really big name people. So it's I think what you do is really important too, and I think as a writer and as a reader, I really appreciate what you put out there for us to consume. So I can't wait for more to come.
Oh man. All right. I got to add another 0 to this check before I send it
off.
Oh,
come on.
Right. Thanks a lot, Chuck, man. That really touches my heart. I really appreciate that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for me to step aside with my writer's block coffee and a fresh cigar and hand the floor over to my guest, Chuck Buda, with the Sentinel series, Book 1, Sleeping Dogs Lie.
All right. Here we go. My chapters are short, but I'll just read the first one just to give people a taste. So, Lawless Ray Martin felt little pain. He had learned to cope with anguish in all forms at an early age. The son of a drunken mother and an abusive father, little Raymond had transformed his personal nightmares into a raison d'etre to get what he wanted. Ray Martin took what he wanted when he wanted it. Few chose to stand between him and his desires. Those who dared typically died a slow, ghastly death, like Sheriff Tyndall lying at his feet. Ray sniffed his bloody fingers. The mesmerizing scent took him back to a day when his father had beaten him in the yard. The old man had taken up a plank of wood against his son, saving his swollen, bruised knuckles. Ray had lost 2 teeth that day, and the smell of his own blood overwhelmed his memories. What's next? Lawless Ray Martin's friend Chi-Chi kicked at the sheriff while he was down. Removing his hat, Ray sucked the blood from his fingertips. He pulled his buckskin shirt taut to inspect the wound beneath his ribs. A clean-through shot from back to front, and the pain had now just registered. Ray's anger had eclipsed the injury until he had subdued the sheriff. Crouching alongside Sheriff Tyndall, Ray squeezed the man's cheeks in his fist, forcing a contorted expression upon the unconscious face. Best take care of that wound, Lawless. Smitty dug through his pack for needle and thread. He tossed a nearly empty bottle of rot gut to his boss. Ray caught the bottle and laid it on the sheriff's chest. Plenty of time for that. He had more urgent matters to tend to, like figuring out how to make Tyndall's remaining moments as painful as he could. You reckon the good folks of Piney Gulch will send a posse? Chi-Chi giggled as he brushed away the grit from his mouth. His wispy black mustache hardly flinched. Ray Martin rose to his full height. At 6 feet and 3 inches, Lawless towered over most men. His old man had stood 2 inches taller than his boy, but it did little to impede his revenge against his father. He tamped his brown Stetson into place and glared towards the east. We'll be long gone by the time Piney Gulch figures out their esteemed lawman is missing. Ray's rampage was fast approaching its conclusion. He and his men had ridden hundreds of miles to avenge his lifetime of slights. 21 men had been massacred along the way. Every single one of them deservedly so for infractions as small as insults, on up to locking him away in jail. It didn't matter if Ray Martin had stolen, cheated, raped, beaten, or killed folks. He swore the day he hung his daddy from the neck as a 16-year-old, no man would cause him harm by tongue or fist. The last stop along his trail of revenge lies due east of Pine Gulch. His eyes watered with anticipation at the penultimate battle ahead. Chi-Chi bit the cork from the bottle and spit it into the dusk that circled them. He spilled whiskey onto a rag and squeezed it against Ray's side. The burn sharpened his senses. Ray saw the plan unfold before him. He steadied himself while the men cleaned his wound and ran a thread through the edges. Smitty's hands proved as steady with a needle as they were with irons. He deftly closed the opening and chewed through the last portion of string. Good as new. Smitty brushed his bloody hands on the soaked rag. Chi-Chi offered the bottle to Ray, who dismissed the alcohol with a wave. Chi-Chi slugged a mouthful. He offered it to Smitty. Too much backwash, Smitty grimaced, returning the supplies to his bag. Chi-Chi shrugged and downed the rest. He smashed the empty bottle on the rocky surface of the plain. Ray was grateful they had traveled far off the trail. If Chi-Chi had left clues to their escape along the trail, he would have had to dole out dire consequences for such stupidity. Luckily for Chi-Chi, their route through the fields would hide such an indiscretion. Saddle up. We'll keep moving through the night. He waited as his men climbed onto their horses. Once they were settled, Ray made an example of Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi, you will walk alongside Sheriff Tyndall. Chi-Chi frowned. But how can he walk? The whining improved Ray's mood. Upsetting others brightened the cloudiest of days. Tie his boots to your horse. We'll drag the dear sheriff to our final destination. I can make sure he stays with us from on my horse. Ray climbed into his saddle. He turned his steed toward Chi-Chi. I need somebody to keep that badge on his chest until we get to town. He chewed the inside of his mouth, relishing the old taste of copper. You see, it's very important that folks know this sack of bones used to be a lawman. Smitty clucked his tongue, steering his horse closer. Wouldn't it be easier to toss his body over the saddle? Without averting his stare from Chi-Chi, Ray chuckled. Easier for who? Chi-Chi or Sheriff Tyndall? Before anyone could answer, Ray ordered the man be tied to Chi-Chi's horse. His tone suggested movement without delay. Chi-Chi rushed to lash the sheriff by his boots. He secured the other end of the rope to the pommel and then awaited instructions. Satisfied they were ready to move out, Ray pointed at the sheriff, who began to slowly return to consciousness. It's okay if his head and such falls apart. Just make sure that badge stays right where it belongs. He tugged the reins and gigged his horse into a trot. Smitty followed suit on his left. Chi-Chi's horse hurried to keep pace with the others. Ray glanced over his right shoulder, enjoying the sight of Chi-Chi huffing and puffing. The man held his hat down with one hand while he swung the opposite arm wildly to provide his body with much-needed momentum. Ray chuckled to himself. He couldn't have asked for a more robust first impression on the townsfolk ahead. They had no inkling that the devil was on his way. Soon, those folks would wish lawless Ray Martin had passed them by, especially those who had wronged him long ago.
All right, that was Chuck Buda reading a sample chapter from his brand new series, The Sentinel, and this was book 1, Sleeping Dogs Lie. Hey, real quick, happy birthday to Chuck. His birthday is the day after this episode comes out, so happy birthday, Chuck. So happy to have you back here again. People, make sure you click that link in the show notes to find and follow Chuck everywhere, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out next time when I'm back with a new author, a brand new book, and an all-new sample chapter. Take care, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving, and see you again real soon.